Let me welcome you, my dear students. This is our fourth learning session of 14th to 19th century poetry with them in English second semester. Dear students, if you remember what we did last time, we tried to learn the textual reading or textual analysis of the Canterbury Tale. So my dear student, it was about the previous lecture. So today we are going to discuss the Chaucer as a representative of 14th century and humor and realism in the Canterbury Tale. So let's start our discussion on the Chaucer as a representative of 14th century. As you people know that Geoffrey Chaucer was a poet in the 14th century. He represents his own age and holds the mirror to his time. His poetry reflects the 14th century not in fragments but as a whole. The prologue to the Canterbury Tale forms a wonderful commentary upon English life in the Middle Ages. So my dear students, let me tell you that the group of pilgrims described in the prologue is itself an unequaled picture of the society of Chaucer time. Here are some 30% belonging to the most different classes. The knight is the picture of a professional soldier coming straight from foreign wars with clothes all stained from his armor. The variety of lords for whom he has fought suggests that he is some kind of mercenary, but it seems that Chaucer may have known people at the English court with similar records. So my dear students, Chaucer has, we can simply say that the medieval social theory divided the English king's subject into three states: the military, the clergy and laity. So Chaucer observes the division: the knight, the squire and the yeoman belonging to the military state, as knights dominate the English society since the Norman conquest. So Chaucer, we can simply say that, begins his catalogue with the knight. So my dear students, we talk about the clerical state. So the clerical state presents a much less worthy trio: the prioress, the monk and the friar. Like most prioress in the Middle Ages, she has the manners of the upper class. Her, we can simply say that her tenderness to her dogs and we can say that her biggest motto on her rosary amuse the readers. Students, the shortcomings of the 14th century monks and nuns are, we can say that, the amusingly displayed in the general prologue. The clerk and the parson were members of the secular clergy, while Chaucer clerk is devoted to the, we can say that, the pursuits of knowledge. We can say that the Chaucer's parson is the ideal parish priest, free from the faults both of the regular clergy and some parish priests. So Chaucer also portrays two church officials, the summoner and the partner. He was aware of the weaknesses of the church officials, their love of money, corruption and materialism. The partner is the, we can say that, the despicable and we can say despicable parasite trading in letters of partners with the sinner. We can simply say that among the poor pilgrims, the plowman is a good person, he is a virtuous man, he is a hard worker who loves God and his neighbor, serves other and pay his tithe. So my dear students, if we talk about the next character, means in the Doctor of Physics, we have a vivid picture of the medieval medicine man with his herbal remedies and his knowledge of astronomy as well as astrology. Chaucer indicates that his medical studies has drawn him away from the study of the Bible, that his study was but little on the Bible. So my dear students, in order to give us a realistic picture of contemporary society, Chaucer also draw the characters of Miller, we can say that a municipal and sergeant at law, Franklin and Reeve, shipman and cook. All of them are distinguished from each other. Most of them are clear and materialistic. So my dear students, Chaucer's sergeant at law was discreet and worthy of great reverence. He was an we can simply say that the eminent and efficient lawyer. Nobody could find any defect in his writing. And if we talk about the character of wife of Bath, it represents the class of women who, having an amorous nature or we can simply say that the character of wife of Bath is amorous nature, cared little for we can say that the chastity. With the little for chastity, she was fond of merry and making. She was fond of merrymaking and fun. The prologue tells about the lot about the food, the hobbies, and mode of dress of the time. It also makes us, we can simply say that, acquainted with the clothes worn by persons of different ranks, position, and professions. So, though Chaucer held the mirror of his time, his picture of society is incomplete in one respect. Chaucer's group of pilgrims continues a picture of the society of his time, which has no parallel in the country. So, my dear students, let me discuss about that Chaucer. It is the Chaucer who gives us the wholesome, we can say that the wholesome view of the 14th century England. Most of the critics believe that Chaucer prologue presents a realistic picture of the society. As Compton Rickard remarks that Chaucer symbolizes as no other writer does the Middle Ages. So if you talk about the prologue, it is a picture gallery of the 14th century England. He has painted his society in a realistic manner and with great artistic, we can say that, the detachment. If we talk about the pilgrims, they show the most outstanding features of medieval age. Chaucer made his framework a pilgrimage and introduced all sorts and conditions of men and women that he had met in his lifetime. So if we talk about the J.M. Manley, who opines that Chaucer had in mind some definite person while portraying the characters in the prologue. My dear students, if we talk about the Chaucer, that Chaucer reflects the political and social conditions of his age. The most important event of his age was Peasants' Revolt. It was against the cruelty and inequality of a higher state of society. In None Price Tale, the reference to the turmoil is direct. The Peasants' Revolt foreshadowed the industrial troubles that lay in remote future. In medieval age time, the journey was unsafe and expensive. In None Price Tale, we had a traveler who was killed for the money, and it was custom in medieval time to travel with arms. So that's why poets say, we can simply say that the poet says, yeoman bears a gay dagger. Means we can say that, and by his side a sword and a buckler. Buckler, and on that other side a gay dagger. So Miller carries a sword and a buckle, and we can say that, whereas Reeve has with his rusty blade. and by his side he bears a rusty blades. These are the typical medieval figures in the prologue. And we can also say that if we talk about the squire whose quality is singing, in the medieval age or in the 14th century, people loved music. Miller has we can say the big pipe with him to entertain his companion. The squire play upon flute and loved to sing song. As Chaucer says that the singing he was or flirting all the day. Similarly, if we talk about the friar, friar has a beautiful voice and can sing very well. So singing, which was 14th century or medieval trait, fully exhibited through the medieval characters. So we can simply say that Chaucer is a true representation of, or we can say that the Chaucer represents the 14th century. And if we talk about the expensive clothes, the people in the medieval time or 14th century loved to wear expensive clothes. It had become a part and parcel of society. That's why knight horses are more decorated than himself. If we talk about the wife of Bath, she is an excellent cloth maker. She is almost in search of opportunities to be seen well and pleasant. Her kerchief was of fine texture and weighted. If you talk about the squire, that squire is the most showy of all the characters. His clothes are, we can simply say that it was like a mead which is full of fresh flower, white and red. If we talk about that, the group of social pilgrims represent nearly every walk of 14th century England, including warlike class, industrial section, the provision and gracie, and if we talk about the trader religious class and the monastic order. So we can simply say that his group of social pilgrims continues a picture of society of his time which has no parallel in any country. So this is a true picture of 14th century representation which is presented by the poet of Geoffrey Chaucer. So my dear student, it was about the pilgrims, that it includes all the classes of the 14th century, and it is as ideal as well as real. So my dear student, it was about the we can simply say that the true representation of 14th century. So let's discuss the humor in the Canterbury Tale. Dear student, Chaucer is one of the first English short storyteller and the greatest humorist in English literature. The prologue to the Canterbury Tale, humor is all pervasive, and humor that is used in the prologue appears chiefly in the shape of irony and satire. And though we do have some examples of pure humor, which means fun and laughter for their own sake. So Chaucer is, we can say that, the perpetually showing the humorous or humorous side, not merely of his emotions but his interest, his knowledge, his belief, his everything. So let's discuss the prologue of verse. Plenty illustrations of Chaucer's sense of humor. His characterization of almost all the character is indeed humorous. It has at the same time to be pointed out that Chaucer humor is mostly ironical and satirical. For example, we laugh at the squire's love insomnia, and the we can say that the lens of the clerk of Oxford and of his horse, which is compared to a rake. In Chaucer treatment of characters, satire has generally a corrective or corrective motive. So my dear students, let me tell you that irony is one of the chief weapons of satire. So Chaucer is not out to reform people, but he surely finds amusement in the we can say that absurdities and affections and some of the minor vice of the people he deals with. So Chaucer's use of irony and satire is neither malicious nor cynical, but his satire is always mild and gentle. His humor is thoroughly delightful, being free from the taint of ill will. So we can simply say that his whole point of view in dealing with human life and human beings is that of humorist. The poet paints the characters of the clerk of Oxford with we can say that with kind and patronizing humor. Chaucer's humor has a great variety. His humor is all we can say the pervading and persuasive. Its omnipresence holds a perennial charm to us, but it is not without pathos. He mingles the comic with the tragic. Smiles and tears find here equal. So we can simply say that beside humor is Chaucer never forced upon the reader. It arises out of the situation. No effort is exercised by the author to create humor. It is spontaneous, natural and inevitable. So my dear students, let me discuss that Chaucer's use of irony to build a satirical portrait and to make a laugh in clearly seen in his presentation of the priors. The priors speak French frequently. We can say that the prior speaks French fluency, means fluently, and according to the school of Stanford at Bow, this is an ironical reference to the prioress. Like her dress, if you talk about her dress and her fashionable manners are also ironical, but it represents us or it explains us the humor. Her charitable nature is depicted in such a way as to amuse us. If you talk about the monk, that monk is a truly portrayed satirically. So he is a fond of hunting. He keeps a large number of fine horses in his stable. And if we talk about that, he finds the rules of monastic discipline to be old and therefore out of date. He does not wish to drive himself mad by studying too much, and so on. So this was about the humor that we find. Thus humor is the most prominent ingredient in the Chaucer characterization of the pilgrims in the prologue, and this humor lets a most distinctive quality of his character sketches. So my dear students, so he uses humorous remarks to highlight the follies, and if we talk about that follies, that it is explained with well chosen words. So my dear students, it was about the humor in the Canterbury Tale. So let's discuss the realism in the Canterbury Tale. So my dear students, if we talk about the realism, that realism of Chaucer in the Canterbury Tales not gives us the impression that whatever has been described in real in the ordinary sense of the word. So realism is not reality, it is a collective term of the devices that give the effect of reality. What he has given us a direct we can say that the direct transpiration of the daily life. So my dear student, if we talk about the realism by Chaucer, that his justification that he has portrayed as it was. He directly or he used it that, in real manners. So we can say that he uses neither only virtue nor vice, and he depicted the society as it was. So my dear students, we can simply say that the first prominent modern element of the Chaucer poetry is the originality of outlook. So he has executive virtue of the style and manners by the magic of his touch. He made a dialect into a standard language. So, my dear students, he is the first great English poet. The crowning glory of the prologue lies in the fact that it is a masterpiece by Chaucer, and he uses the naked words in English. He means he explained it as it is represented at the time, and he explained it in a real manners. So Chaucer is a true representative of his age, and he also explains about the things in realistic manner. He tells about the realism, what is the actually being presented at that time. He was the master who came like a bright morning in an early spring. So Chaucer aim in writing the words, thus the sole aim of the Chaucer was poetry for its own sake, and he tells about the things in real manners. So we can simply say that Chaucer represent things as it is seen at that time. So we can find the realism, we can find the humor and true representation of Chaucer in the prologue, in the Canterbury Tale. So my dear student, so it